All right, welcome to The Explainer. For almost 100 years, our picture of the universe has had these giant holes in it. We've plugged them with imaginary stuff to make the math work, but today we're going to look at a totally new idea, a radical vision where all those phantoms just vanish, and we get to see what the cosmos really is.
So here's the deal. The universe has a massive, massive problem. Like 95% of it is completely missing. We've come up with names for this missing stuff, dark matter and dark energy. And for decades, we've just assumed it was some kind of particle we hadn't found yet. But after all this time, all this searching, we've got nothing, absolutely zero. So that leads to a pretty wild question. What if we've been hunting for ghosts? What if there was never anything there to find in the first place?
And it turns out this isn't just a hypothetical. The latest data we're getting from our best telescopes has basically broken the old standard model of cosmology. It just doesn't work anymore. It can't predict how galaxies are laid out or how fast the universe is expanding. So what you're seeing here is a choice. On the left, that's the old broken paradigm, this clunky model held together with duct tape and phantom particles that just don't fit the evidence. But on the right, that's where things get really interesting. A whole new geometric reality is taking shape, and it suggests that everything we've been calling dark is really just the behavior of a single five-dimensional cosmic membrane.
So to really get why this huge shift is happening now, we've got to take a step back. We need to talk about what might be the greatest scientific scavenger hunt in all of history, the epic, decades-long search for the particles that were supposed to be the answer to dark matter.
Okay, let's really get into this. To try and catch these theoretical ghost particles, scientists did some pretty incredible things. They built these gigantic, super pure tanks filled with liquid xenon, and then they buried them a mile deep in the Earth just to shield them from all the background radiation from space. The whole idea was to sit there in total, absolute silence and just wait, hoping that a single one of these particles, a WIMP, would eventually bump into one of the xenon atoms and create this tiny little flash of light.
And this gigantic effort, we're talking billions of dollars, an entire generation of physicists pouring their lives into this, it all led to one single, unmistakable conclusion.
And look, this wasn't just some one-off experiment that failed. It was everyone, everywhere. From Lux in the US to CDMS, the story was always the same. Every single major experiment designed to find these particles came up completely empty. They just systematically crossed off every possible place the theory said these particles could be hiding, and every single time the result was nothing.
But the real nail in the coffin for the particle idea came from the LZ experiment. This is it. Between 2025 and 2026, their detector got so ridiculously sensitive that it started picking up the background hum from totally normal neutrinos, the ones coming from the sun. This created what they call an irreducible neutrino fog. Think of it like a permanent static on the line. It's a background noise that makes it physically impossible to ever detect a WIMP signal again. The hunt literally hit a physical wall it can never, ever get past.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't one of those, we just need a bigger detector situations. Nope, the search has hit its fundamental physical limit. It's over. And after all those decades of chasing ghosts, the evidence is pointing to one really stark conclusion. The particles just aren't there. They never were.
Okay, so if there are no particles, then what in the world is holding galaxies together? Well, the answer means we have to completely rewire how we think about reality itself. We've got to stop looking for missing stuff in our familiar three dimensions and start looking at the shape, the geometry of a five-dimensional universe.
So try to picture this. Imagine our entire universe isn't this empty void with stuff floating in it. Instead, imagine it's a giant physical four-dimensional drumhead, an elastic membrane, just hanging out in a bigger five-dimensional space. And this isn't just some sci-fi metaphor. Physicists have actually calculated its physical properties, like its tension, how stiff it is. It's incredibly stiff, but just like a drum skin, it can bend and stretch and vibrate.
Right, so in this new way of thinking, dark matter isn't a thing at all. It's what the theory calls a geometric ghost. And here's the best way to think about it. You know how a 3D object, like your hand, can cast a flat 2D shadow on the wall? It's kind of like that. The insane weight of galaxies and galaxy clusters literally bends and warps our 4D membrane into that fifth dimension. So, the extra gravity we've been detecting for a century, that's just the shadow of that 5D warp. And this image here shows exactly what's going on. The mass of the cosmic web, all those galaxies, creates this fold, this dent in the membrane. We've been measuring the gravitational pull from that fold and calling it dark matter. And that's why we can never find a particle. It's a pretty simple reason, really. You can't catch a fold in space-time in a particle detector. Now, look, this isn't just some cool story to tell. The real power of this idea, the reason it's gaining so much traction, is that it just elegantly solves so many of these huge, long-standing puzzles that had the old particle model completely stumped for decades.
Okay, take the cusp core problem. For years, the particle theory predicted that dark matter should all pile up and create this sharp, spiky cusp of gravity right at the center of galaxies. But when we actually look at galaxies, we don't see that at all. We see a smooth, flat core. Well, the elastic membrane explains this perfectly. Think about it. You can't fold a stretched-out drumhead into a perfect, infinitely sharp point without ripping it, right? It's always going to smooth itself out. And that natural smoothing creates the exact cores we actually see out there in the universe.
All right, now let's talk about dark energy. That number you're looking at, 10 to the 120th power, that represents what is without a doubt the single worst prediction in the entire history of science. The old theory predicted a value for dark energy that was off by 120 orders of magnitude. I mean, that's not just wrong, that is a catastrophic, embarrassing failure of a model. So the Brane theory comes along and just solves this disaster. It shows that dark energy isn't some weird anti-gravity force pushing everything apart. It's way simpler. It's just the cosmic breath. It's the leftover thermodynamic energy from the Big Bang itself, making the whole membrane gently vibrate or oscillate back and forth on a 2 billion-year cycle. And the most incredible part? This predicted brainwave perfectly matches the brand new cutting-edge data we're getting from the DESI instrument. It's a perfect fit. So what does all this mean? Where does this leave us? Well, it means we can finally just throw away all the broken pieces, all the patches and fixes of that old model. We don't need 3 separate, weird mysteries that each require their own magical solution. Instead, we get one single, elegant, physical reality.
Think about it. Those invisible particle halos that were supposed to be holding galaxies together? Gone, replaced by the geometric shadow of something called the 5D Weil tensor, which is really just a fancy way of saying a gravitational tide in 5 dimensions. And that weird, static cosmological constant that was fine-tuned to drive expansion? Also gone, replaced by the simple thermodynamic sine wave of the vibrating membrane. And all those other little fixes they needed for things like how galaxies rotate, all explained by the natural elasticity of the membrane itself.
So the ultimate takeaway here is, it's pretty profound. The geometric ghost we've been calling dark matter and the cosmic breath we've been calling dark energy, they aren't separate mysteries at all. They are just different ways we've been looking at the exact same underlying 5-dimensional reality. The universe isn't filled with invisible phantoms, the universe is the thing. And it's only right now that we are finally beginning to see its true shape.